He was already on the ground when she pushed through. Not fallen, placed. The specific way a body goes down when the legs make a decision before the brain can object. Folding at the knees first, then the side. With the terrible neatness of a man who has spent his whole life controlling what his body does and has just lost that argument completely. He was on the marble floor of the Grand Hyatt Seoul's lobby at 7:23 on a Thursday evening, and the crowd around him had done what crowds do, expanded outward first, then contracted into a ring, the particular shape of people who want to help and do not know how, and are therefore performing the emotion of helping rather than doing the thing itself. Someone was on a phone. Someone else was telling the someone on the phone what the someone on the phone was asking, which was the wrong information delivered with complete confidence. A man in a hotel uniform was on his knees beside the body, doing chest compressions in the way of a person who took a certification course 4 years ago and has not thought about it since. She saw all of this in the 2 seconds between the ring opening to let her through and the moment she was on the ground beside him. She had been a trauma chaplain for 3 years in a level 1 trauma center, and before that, a crisis counselor for 5. And the particular education of those 8 years had given her the ability to read a room the way other people read faces. Fast, specific, and in the dark. She put her hand on the compression man's shoulder. "Stop," she said. Not loudly. The word carried because of how it was said, with the quality of someone who has said stop in rooms where stopping mattered and knew how to mean it. He stopped. She put 2 fingers to the side of the neck that wasn't pressed to the floor. She counted. She looked at the chest. She looked at the face. 43 seconds since he went down, she estimated from the room's behavior. The crowd density. The stage of the phone call. 43 seconds was not yet the number she needed to be afraid of, but it was on its way there. She leaned down. Not to the chest, to the ear. She put her mouth close enough that her voice would go in before it went out, and she said, in a register she had spent 8 years learning and 3 years practicing and 1 year trying to forget. "I need you to come back. Stay with me. Come back." The room was noisy, and her voice was not loud, and nobody in the ring could have heard what she said. He breathed, not a gasp. A breath. Specific, deliberate, the breath of a body that has just received information it was waiting for and has decided to respond to it. His chest rose. His fingers moved on the marble floor, and his eyes, dark, still, the eyes of a man arriving somewhere from very far away, opened. They found her face. She was close enough that she was the first thing he saw. Close enough that she watched the focus come back into his eyes like a lens adjusting, blurred, then resolving, then landing on her with the particular weight of someone who has just come back from somewhere and is trying to understand where he has arrived. She held his gaze. "There you are," she said. Quiet. Only something moved across his face that she had seen before, in 8 years of rooms where people were deciding whether to stay. The specific expression of someone who has just been given a reason they did not know they needed. The crowd started breathing again. World-build the Grand Hyatt Seoul sat above the city like a well-dressed thought. Elevated. Deliberate. The kind of building that charged its rates in the full knowledge that what it was selling was not rooms, but adjacency to a version of the world where things worked smoothly and the view was always good. The lobby on a Thursday evening in November was the particular organized chaos of a 5-star hotel at the peak of its dinner hour. Guests arriving and departing. A conference delegation from somewhere serious moving in a cluster toward the elevators. The bar doing its soft-lit business in the corner. And the concierge desk managing 4 problems simultaneously with the expression of someone who has been trained to perform calm so consistently it has become indistinguishable. from the real thing. Dominique had been crossing the lobby to meet a colleague for dinner. She had been in Seoul for 11 days, on a fellowship she had applied for without expecting to receive, and received without being entirely sure what to do with, a research position at a crisis intervention program affiliated with Yonsei University. 3 months of work on a paper she had been trying to write for 2 years on the specific language patterns of de-escalation in high-stakes emotional environments. She was in Seoul because of the work. The work was what remained when everything else had been reorganized around its absence. She had been walking through the lobby with her phone out, looking at the message from her colleague about which entrance. When the crowd opened, and she had seen the floor, she did not make a decision to stop. She stopped. This was something she had come to understand about herself, that 8 years of training had rewritten the sequence of things in her nervous system. For most people, the sequence was stimulus, perception, decision, action. For her, in certain situations, the decision had migrated somewhere before perception, so that by the time her conscious mind registered what she was seeing, her body was already in motion. She had been told by a supervisor she trusted that this was both her greatest professional asset and a thing she should monitor carefully. She had not been monitoring it carefully for 2 years. On the floor of the Grand Hyatt Seoul, 30 seconds after a man she did not know stopped breathing, she had stopped monitoring it and started doing what she was built to do. She did not know who he was. She would learn this shortly. The specific way a crowd shifts when the unconscious man on the floor is a man of a particular kind of the security that materialized from 3 directions in under 2 minutes. The quality of urgency in the people around him that was different from the standard urgency of medical emergency, and contained the additional frequency of people who understand that something very bad has happened to someone, for whom bad things have consequences beyond the personal. She would learn in the hour that followed that the man she had pulled back was Seo Han-oh. She would learn this from a man named Jin, who arrived at her elbow while she was still on the floor, and who said, very quietly in English, "Please, do not leave." Not a request, the kind of sentence that is structured as a request and functions as. She would learn it from the controlled fear in that sentence, which was the fear of a professional managing the aftermath of something that should not have happened, and who understood that the woman currently on the floor was currently the most important variable. She did not know any of that yet. She knew that he was breathing. She knew that his eyes had opened for her voice. She knew that he was now looking at her with an attention that was unlike anything she had been looked at with before, not because it was intense, though it was, but because of its quality. The attention of a man arriving somewhere, looking at the first thing he sees, and understanding that the first thing matters. She held his gaze, and she did not look away. This was the first rule she had learned, 8 years ago, from the woman who trained her in the specific work of being present with people who were deciding whether to stay. Do not look away first. The look is the tether. You are the tether. Hold. She held. He stayed. The inciting collision, the save and the stumble is security, moved her back, not unkindly, efficiently, with the practiced minimum force of people who are managing a situation and know that minimum force is faster than maximum. A hand on her shoulder, a step forward from 2 directions, and she was standing instead of kneeling, 3 feet back, while 2 men in dark jackets took the positions she had occupied. She let it happen. She was not going to fight security in the lobby of a hotel over a man she did not know. She started to turn. Wait, his voice. Low, roughened from the floor, carrying the specific thickness of a voice that has just been used after not being used, after silence of the particular kind that is not sleep and not unconsciousness, but something between them. It was the first word she had heard him say, and it was in English, which told her something. She turned back. He was being helped to sitting. He had not let them help him to standing, one hand up, the flat palm gesture of a man who needs a moment and is used to the gesture being respected. He was sitting on the marble floor with his jacket askew and 2 security professionals flanking him and a medical kit being opened behind him, and he was looking at her. "What did you say?" he said. She looked at him. "Which part?" "The last part. Before he stopped. Something crossed his face that she recognized. The slightly vertiginous quality of a person trying to locate the boundary between where they went and where they came back, which was a boundary that was real and specific, and that people described consistently once they had been close to it. "Before I opened my eyes." She said it again, the same words, the same register. Not performing it, simply delivering it the way she had said it on the floor, which was the only way she knew how to say it, without distance. He was very still. She had seen this before, too, the stillness of someone who has just heard something that located them in a way they cannot explain and are trying to sit with the inexplicability of it. There you are. 2 words. The words themselves were ordinary. What was not ordinary was the frequency underneath them, the training built, grief built, 8 years built quality of a voice that had learned how to mean you matter, stay without saying either of those words. "You're not medical," he said. "No," she said. "You're not hotel staff." "No." He looked at her with the recalibrating attention, the same quality she had seen in his eyes when they opened. Now fully present, no longer arriving but arrived. "Who are you?" he said. "Someone who was crossing the lobby," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. The medical kit was open. The security professional on his left was saying something quietly and with some urgency into an earpiece. The crowd had been moved back to a respectful and still deeply interested distance. The lobby had the specific acoustic quality of a large space holding its breath. "Jin," he said. The man who had appeared at her elbow, compact, wire-rimmed glasses, the bearing of someone whose job was to be the most efficient person in any room, materialized at his side. A brief exchange in Korean. Jin looked at her, looked back, said something short and careful. Seo Hanul looked at the floor for a moment, then at her. "My car is outside," he said. "I would like you to come with us." She looked at him, at the security, the medical kit, the lobby of the Grand Hyatt Seoul at 7:26 p.m. "Are you asking?" she said. "Or is this one of those sentences that's structured like asking?" Something moved in his expression. Not quite amusement, a displacement in the controlled surface, a brief visibility of whatever was underneath the surface. "Asking," he said. She thought about the colleague waiting for her by the other entrance, about the dinner and the fellowship paper and the 3 months of work she was in Seoul to do, about the specific feeling of a man's eyes opening and finding her face, and the word "wait," said in English in a lobby in November. "I'll tell my colleague I'm delayed," she said. CTA Bridge, welcome back, my soft-spoken storm chasers and voices in the dark. If this story found you tonight and you are new here, stay right where you are. Subscribe before we go any further, because Dominique is about to find out who she just pulled back, and you do not want to come in at the 2nd chapter. Hit the like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where this voice has carried tonight. Every city in those comments is someone who chose to be here, and our family stretches further every time. And I love every name. Find your quiet corner. Let everything else wait. Because this story is about a woman whose greatest gift cannot be printed or proven, only heard. And we are only at the beginning. Story deepen. Heroine's wound she had learned the voice at 22, from a woman named Dr. Okafor, who ran the crisis intervention training program at the hospital where Dominique had taken her first clinical placement, and who had said, in their third session together, the thing that had reorganized everything: the voice is not a tool. The voice is a commitment. When you use it, you are telling someone that you are going to be present for whatever comes next. Do not use it unless you mean it. She had meant it every time. For 8 years, through the chaplaincy and the counseling and the specific education of sitting with people who were at the edge of whatever their edge was, the clinical edge, the emotional edge, the edge that was the last available ground before a step that couldn't be taken back, she had used the voice, and she had meant it every time. Marcus had been her brother's best friend since they were 12, and her friend since she was 15, and the person she called when she didn't know what else to do since she was 22. Which was convenient, and also not convenient at all, for reasons she had been managing the feelings about since she was 22. He had called her at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, and she had been asleep, and she had not heard the phone, and by the time she called back at 7, and the call went to voicemail. This was not the story as it appeared in the sequence of facts, which was a different and less bearable story about a man in crisis and a phone that rang in the dark, and a woman who had spent 8 years being the person who answered, and had not answered this once. The story as it appeared in the sequence of facts was that she had been asleep, which was a thing that happened, which was not a moral failure, which her therapist had said to her in language that was accurate and that she could understand intellectually, and that her nervous system had been rejecting for 2 years. She had taken the fellowship because Seoul was far enough that the geography itself felt like something. Not running, she was specific with herself about that, in the way of someone who has learned to be honest about their own evasions. She was not running from Marcus. She was running towards something that was not the version of her apartment in Chicago, where she had listened to his voicemail 47 times in the first week, and where every surface had accumulated the weight of the specific grief of a person who knows exactly what they had and did not reach for it. The paper she was writing was about the language patterns of de-escalation. It was the most honest thing she had produced in 2 years, which was not coincidental. She had been crossing the lobby of the Grand Hyatt Seoul to have dinner with a colleague, and she had seen the floor, and her body had been in motion before her mind had a vote. Dr. Okafor's voice in her memory, from 8 years ago from the 3rd session: do not use it unless you mean it. She had been on the floor of the Grand Hyatt Seoul, and she had leaned down, and she had said, "Come back," and she had meant it with everything she had, not as a professional, not as a trained practitioner of the specific language of people who are deciding whether to stay. She had meant it the way she had not been able to mean it at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, because she had not been awake to mean it. She had been awake this time. He had come back. She was in the car now, in the dark of a Seoul November, going somewhere she didn't know the address of, with a man she didn't know the name of, and she was thinking about what it meant to be awake when it counted, and what it cost, and whether the cost was different when you had chosen it. She was thinking about Dr. Okafor. She was thinking, I meant it. Story deepened. Heroes wound Jin told her in the car. Not everything. The version Jin delivered was clean and bounded, the professional condensation of a man who was experienced at providing context to people who had just entered a situation they needed to understand. Seo Hano. The accident at the venue, a structural failure, a fall, the specific convergence of a heavy schedule and a body that had been running on insufficient sleep and insufficient everything for longer than it should have been. He's been doing too much, Jin said. This was stated with the matter-of-fact tone of a man reporting a fact that he has reported before to no particular effect. Seo Hanaul, who was on the other side of the car in the window corner with his eyes partly closed, and the quality of a man who is present but conserving, said something in Korean. Jin said, in English, for her benefit. He says, "He's fine." "He's not fine," she said. "He fainted." "Fine people don't faint." Seo Hanaul opened his eyes. He looked at her with the particular look of a man who is accustomed to being managed and is currently deciding whether to be managed by this. "Vasovagal syncope," she said. "Probably. It's common when the body has been under prolonged physical and psychological stress and then encounters a secondary trigger. A room that's too warm, standing too long, a sharp drop in blood pressure. It's not the fainting that's the problem. It's what the fainting is telling you." He looked at her. "I'm not medical," she said. "You established that. But I've sat with enough bodies in enough crisis rooms to know the difference between a body that collapsed because of one thing and a body that collapsed because of everything accumulated." He was quiet for a moment. "And which was this?" he said. "You tell me," she said. He looked at the window, at Seoul passing in the dark, the lights and the November rain that had started while they were in the lobby, the specific texture of a city at night seen through glass. "The last time I slept," he said, "longer than 4 hours, Jin. 9 days, Jin said. 9 days, Seo Hanaul said. He said it without inflection, as a reported fact. The way a person reports a fact about themselves when they have been so far inside the management of their own exhaustion that they have stopped experiencing it as something that should concern them and have started experiencing it as terrain. "Why?" she said. He looked at her. The assessment quality was in his eyes again, the full attention look, the arriving and looking quality that had been there when he opened his eyes and found her face. "That is a longer answer," he said. "We're in a car," she said. "You're not going anywhere." Something in the controlled surface of his face moved again. The displacement, the brief visibility. She had learned in 8 years to read these micro-expressions not as cracks, but as information. They were the places where what a person was managing and what a person was became briefly the same thing. "I run an organization," he said. "The organization has. There are currently several situations that require my direct attention. Simultaneously, the nature of the situations is such that delegating them produces additional risk. Therefore, I manage them directly." He paused. "This is not a new situation. The scope has been larger recently." "How long has the scope been larger?" she said. "Jin," he said. 14 months, Jin said. She looked at Seo Hanaul. He was looking at the window. 14 months of this, she said. Of a version of this, he said. And before that. He was quiet for a moment. The rain on the window. Seoul in the dark. Before that, he said, a version that was less acute. He paused. The organization has existed for 16 years. I have been managing it at this level, for 16 years. You haven't slept properly in 16 years, she said. He looked at her. That is not what I said. That's what I heard, she said. The displacement happened again. This time it lasted longer before he managed it back. I sleep, he said. Adequately, she repeated. 9 days. The 9 days are an anomaly. The 9 days are the body saying the anomaly is over, she said. The body has a limited tolerance for being told that its requirements are less important than the schedule. At some point it makes the schedule stop. She looked at him steadily. That's what happened in the lobby. He was very quiet. It will happen again, she said. If nothing changes, it will happen again, and the next time the floor of the Grand Hyatt Seoul may not be where it happens. Jin, in the front seat, had the expression of a man listening to someone say the thing he has been trying to say for 14 months, in a language that was apparently not the right one. Seo Hanel looked at the window for a long time. "Why are you in Seoul?" he said. She understood the change of subject and accepted it. "Research fellowship. Crisis intervention and language. I'm writing a paper." "On what?" "The specific language patterns that work when someone is deciding whether to stay in a situation," she said. "The words and the register and the quality of presence that reaches someone who has gone somewhere the ordinary voice can't follow." He turned from the window and looked at her with an attention that was different from the arriving attention and the assessment attention. This was the third kind, the kind she had seen in her work occasionally, when a person encountered something that located them so precisely that they went still around it. "That is what you did," he said. "In the lobby." "Yes," she said. "You've done it before." "Many times," she said. "And tonight." She looked at him. At the rain on the window and the Seoul dark and the car going somewhere she didn't know with a man who had opened his eyes for her voice and then said wait in a lobby in a language she was fairly sure was not his first. "Tonight was not the same as the other times," she said. He was still. "I don't know why," she said. "I don't have a clinical explanation for that." She held his eyes. "I just know it wasn't." The car moved through the rain. Neither of them said anything else for a while. Forced proximity, the competence ladder the house was not what she expected, which meant she had been forming expectations, which was information about herself she decided to file and examine later. It was large and quiet, and lit in the specific way of a house that is managed rather than inhabited, functional, maintained, the lights on in the rooms that needed lights, and off in the rooms that did not, with the impersonal efficiency of a building that had stopped expecting its owner to be present and adjusted accordingly. She was shown to a sitting room while the medical team, an actual medical team, 2 people with equipment that was not a hotel kit, examined him elsewhere. Jin brought tea. He sat across from her with his hands wrapped around his own cup and the expression of a man who had spent 14 months in a specific kind of worry and was currently not worrying, which was its own kind of adjustment. "He never does that," Jin said. "Faints," she said. "Says wait," Jin said. "In a crowd. To a stranger." He looked at the tea. In English. She held the cup and said nothing. "He speaks English," Jin said. "He doesn't use it he keeps it for specific contexts, professional contexts." He stopped. "Not strangers in lobbies," she said. "Not anyone he doesn't know," Jin said. "Very well." She understood, from the precision of that the very well was doing specific work. She stored it. Rung 1. He came to the sitting room an hour later, and he looked better than he had in the car. Color returned. The specific quality of a body that has been horizontal for an hour and has allowed itself to be horizontal, which was not nothing. He sat in the chair across from her, and he looked at her with the arriving attention, which she was coming to understand was his default. And he said, "The medical team says I'm not dying." "I know," she said. "I told you in the car, you're not medical. I was right anyway." The corner of his mouth moved. Not the anteroom of amusement. The anteroom had collapsed somewhere in the car ride, and what was visible now was the thing itself. Brief and specific, and gone almost before she could name it. "They want me to sleep," he said. "Good," she said. "I have 3 calls in the morning. You have a body that sent you to the floor of a hotel lobby," she said. "The calls are negotiable. The body is not." He looked at her. "You say things very directly." 8 years of sitting with people who needed to hear the true thing," she said. You stop softening it. Does it work? He said. Sometimes, she said. When the person is ready to hear it. She looked at him. Are you ready to hear it? Which part? He said. The part where the 9 days are not an anomaly, she said. The part where the 14 months are not an anomaly. The part where the body keeping score is not a weakness, it's a system, and the system has been trying to get your attention for a long time. She paused. The part where tonight was not an accident. He was quiet. Not caused, she said. Not planned, but not random. She held his eyes. The body does not go to the floor of a hotel lobby by accident when it still has options. It goes to the floor when it has run out of the other ways to say stop. The room held that for a moment. I heard you, he said. Not about the speech, about the lobby. Before I opened my eyes, I heard your voice. I know, she said. I couldn't, the sound was wrong. Everything was wrong. The distance was wrong. He looked at the cup in his hands, and then there was a voice it was like a room, like standing in a doorway, and there's a room on the other side, and the room is warm, specific. He stopped. That is not a precise description. It doesn't need to be precise, she said. It just needs to be true. He looked up. Is that from the paper? He said. It's from the work, she said. Everything's from the work. Rung 2. She came back on Saturday. She told herself this was because Jin had called and asked, and that was true, and it was also not the complete truth, and she was being specific with herself about evasions. Jin had called because Seo Hanol had slept. Actually slept. The kind of sleep that the medical team was apparently treating as a minor landmark event, and had woken up asking questions about the fellowship paper, which Jin had delivered with the tone of a man who understood that asking to relay research questions was not what was being relayed. She brought the paper draft. This was probably too much, but she did it anyway. He read the first section in 20 minutes while she drank tea in the sitting room, and then he came in with the draft in his hand and sat down and said, "The second category. The voice that establishes presence rather than instruction." He set the draft on the table and pointed to the passage. You write that the critical variable is not the content of what is said, but the quality of the listener's own state. That the voice can only carry what the person behind it is currently holding. He looked up. What were you holding? In the lobby. She looked at him. You said tonight was not the same as the other times, he said. I want to understand why. She thought about the accurate answer. About 7 am on a Tuesday, and a voicemail and 47 listenings, and the specific grief of a person who knows exactly what they did not do. About the body in motion before the mind voted, and the floor of the lobby and come back said with everything she had. I've been carrying something for 2 years, she said. That night I was carrying it the way I always carry it. And then I was on the floor and you were. She stopped. You were in the place that I know. The place between. I've sat at the edge of that place with many people. I know the sound of it. I know the shape of it. She paused. And something in me, the 2 years of it, decided that this time the answer was not going to be voicemail. He was very still. That's not a clinical explanation, she said. No, he said. It's the true one, she said. He looked at the draft, at the passage about presence, and the quality of the listener's state. He looked at her. You wrote this 2 years ago, he said. I started it 2 years ago, she said. I've been trying to finish it since then. It's been, she stopped. The parts I understand best are the hardest to write, because writing them requires sitting in them, and sitting in them is costly, he said. Yes, she said. I know something about that, he said. She looked at him, at the house and the tea, and the draft on the table, and the Saturday afternoon light coming through the window of a house she was in, because a man had said wait in a hotel lobby on Thursday, and she had meant come back with everything she was. "Tell me what costs," she said. He looked at the window. He looked back. He started talking. Rung 3. He talked for an hour and a half. Not the whole 16 years, the recent part, the 14 months, the specific convergence of pressures that had been tightening around his organization like a hand closing. She listened the way she listened to everything, without fixing, without solving, with the specific quality of presence that her training called witness and that her experience had taught her was the rarest and most necessary thing she could offer anyone. She did not take notes. She did not offer solutions. She asked 2 questions, both small, both designed not to redirect but to deepen. The questions she had learned to ask when someone was already finding their way somewhere and needed a companion rather than a guide. When he finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That's the first time," he said. "Since when?" she said. "Since." He stopped. He looked at the window. "I don't know." He turned back. "That's the problem. I don't know the last time I said it out loud to someone who was only listening." She understood this. She had sat with it enough times to know the specific weight of it, the accumulated cost of language that has no destination, of things known and carried and never delivered anywhere. "The voice needs somewhere to go," she said. "That's in the paper too. The listener is not passive. The listener is the destination." "You're a destination," he said. He said it plainly, without artifice, the way he said most things. It landed in the room between them like something that had been true for several days and was only now being said. She held it carefully. "I'm a researcher on a 3-month fellowship," she said. "I know," he said. "I have a paper to finish and a flight home in 7 weeks." "I know," he said. "And I don't know what I'm doing here," she said. "I mean that accurately. I don't have a plan for this. I don't know what this is." "Neither do I," he said. "I have not." He paused. "I don't do this. I don't have people to my house. I don't—" He stopped again. Something moved in his face. "Jin has been attempting, for several years, to communicate to me that the way I'm living is not sustainable. He has tried many different framings." He looked at her. "You said it in a car in 11 sentences, and my body had already said it in a hotel lobby, and I heard it both times. You were ready to hear it," she said. "I think I was ready for something I didn't know I was ready for," he said. She looked at the draft on the table, at the passage about presence and the quality of what the voice carries, at the 7 weeks and the flight home, and the paper she had been trying to finish for 2 years, and the Thursday evening lobby, and the word wait in English. "I need to finish my paper," she said. "I know," he said. I can't make a promise about what 7 weeks is," she said. "I'm not asking for a promise," he said. "What are you asking for?" she said. He looked at her steadily. "Saturday," he said. "I'm asking for Saturday." She looked at him. "It's already Saturday." "Then I have it," he said. "And we can discuss Sunday on Sunday." Jin came to her hotel on Wednesday morning. She was at the desk with the paper draft and her notes from Saturday and Sunday, which had been added to by Monday and Tuesday, and which were now something different from what they had been, not longer, exactly, but fuller. The way a draft becomes fuller when the writer has stopped being afraid of the true parts. "He slept," Jin said, when she opened the door. "Last night, full night." "Good," she said. "He hasn't." Jin paused. "The team has been documenting the sleep data for 14 months, at his request. He wanted to know the pattern." He looked at the hallway. looked back. Last night was the first full night number since the documentation. He looked at her with the expression of a man delivering information that he has organized very carefully in order to be precise without being sentimental. He asked me to tell you. He said you would understand why it mattered. She stood in the doorway with the draft in her hand and the soul mourning outside her window and the paper that was finally, after 2 years, starting to become the thing it was supposed to be. "Tell him I understand," she said. Jin nodded. He turned to go. "Jin," she said. He stopped. "The English. In the lobby." She paused. He said, "You." Jin turned back. His expression was the most unguarded she had seen it, the careful man's face briefly visible as the person behind the careful man. "His mother was American," he said. "She died when he was 11. English was hers. He doesn't use it casually." He paused. "He doesn't use it at all except in contracts, and with people," he stopped. "With people he's deciding to trust," she said. Jin was quiet. He decided very quickly, he said. "For him." She held the draft. "For anyone," she said. Jin nodded once and went. She closed the door and stood in the room with the paper and the soul mourning, and the thing that had been growing in the space between Thursday and Wednesday, in the specific way that things grow when you stop working to prevent them. She opened the draft. She started writing the part she had not been able to write for 2 years. External threat. The threat arrived on Friday, not to her, to him, which was how she learned about it. Which was also how she learned that the 14 months had a specific and external shape that was not just the schedule and the accumulating weight of what he carried alone. Jin called at 7 a.m. "He would like to see you," he said. "Today if possible." She arrived at the house at noon. He was in the study, a room she had not been in before, different from the sitting room. The room that had the specific quality of a space where actual work happened. The desk with its organized surfaces, and the window that faced the garden, and the kind of light that was working light rather than resting light. He was standing when she came in. He looked better than the lobby. He looked better than Saturday. He also looked like a man who had received news and was managing the received news with the particular precision of someone who manages everything precisely, and who was therefore currently managing it in a way that would cost him later if he kept managing it this way. She sat down. She did not wait for him to tell her to. He looked at the desk. He looked at her. He sat. "There is a situation," he said, "with the organization. It's been developing for some time. The 14 months are partly because of it. I've been managing it carefully because the nature of it required care." He paused. "There has been a development that makes the careful approach no longer sufficient." "Someone moved," she said. "Someone moved," he said. "And the move was specifically timed, which means they had information about my current state." He looked at the desk. The lobby was not private. There were phones. She understood. "They know," she said. "They know I was on the floor," he said. "What they may not know is that it was medical." He paused. "What they may have calculated is that I'm more vulnerable than usual. That the timing is," he stopped. "Favorable for them," she said. "Yes," he looked at her directly. "I'm telling you this because you are in my house regularly, and I want you to understand the current shape of the situation. I am not." He paused again. "I am not telling you because I want you to leave. I am telling you so that if you decide to leave, you are deciding with full information." She looked at him. At the desk and the study and the working light and the 7 weeks and the paper and the 2 years of carrying something that had finally, on a Thursday in a lobby, found somewhere to put itself down. "What is the situation?" she said. The full shape of it. He told her. She listened with the full quality of it. The witness listening. The destination listening. And she did not fix and did not solve. She asked the two small questions, and the questions opened things that the telling had moved around, and by the time he finished, she had the shape of it. You've been carrying this alone, she said. The nature of my position. I know the nature of your position, she said. I'm not questioning the necessity. I'm observing the cost. She looked at him. You told me on Saturday that it was the first time in. You didn't know how long, since you said something out loud to someone who was only listening. Yes, he said. 14 months of this situation, she said. And in 14 months, not once. He was quiet. The body goes to the floor, she said, when it runs out of the other ways, but there's a version before the floor. There's the version where the body keeps going because it has found something that functions like a reason. She held his eyes. You slept Wednesday night. Yes, he said. Why Wednesday? She said. He looked at the window. Because on Tuesday night, he said, Jin told me you were writing again, that the paper was moving. He paused. I thought about you writing, about the true parts you said were the hardest, about the fact that you were writing them anyway. He looked back, and I thought. He stopped. What? She said. That if you could write the hardest parts, he said, then I could sleep. She held that. That's not rational, he said. Most things that work aren't, she said. He looked at her with the arriving attention, the full weight of it. All three kinds collapsed into one. The situation will resolve, he said. It always resolves. The organization has been through worse, and I have been through worse, and the resolution is a matter of time and management. He paused. What I'm saying to you is that I know what the cost of the resolution looks like, and I want you to know it too, before. He stopped. Before what? She said. Before you make any decisions, he said. About the 7 weeks. About what comes after the 7 weeks. She looked at him, at the study and the working light, and the man who had said wait in a lobby, and whose mother had spoken English, and who had slept a full night because she was writing the hardest parts. I've already made some decisions, she said. He was still. I'm going to finish the paper, she said. That was always true. She paused. What I've decided that wasn't always true is that I'm going to finish it here, in this city, for as long as the fellowship allows, and possibly longer, if the research warrants extending. She held his eyes. And I'm going to keep coming to this house on Saturdays. And Wednesdays, apparently, and Tuesdays, he said. Jin mentioned Tuesdays. Jin is very organized, she said. Something moved across his face that was not the anteroom. It was the room itself, the thing past the anteroom. Brief and specific, and more honest than anything she had seen from him, which was already more honest than she had expected from the man on the lobby floor at 7:23 on a Thursday. The situation, when it resolves, and it will resolve, there will be other situations. There are always other situations. I know, she said. I am not a person who has, he stopped, started differently. The 16 years, the way I have been in them. I don't know how to be differently. Entirely I know I need to be, and I am. I am trying to understand what differently looks like. He looked at the desk. But I can't promise you a version of this that is easy or simple or without cost. I know what cost is, she said. I've been paying it for 2 years. I'm not looking for easy. She looked at him. I'm looking for real. She paused. You're the most real thing I've encountered in Seoul. Possibly longer. He held her. I'm also looking for someone who says wait in English in hotel lobbies, she said. The room that was past the anteroom came back, longer this time. He did not manage it back. He let it stay. Declaration he came to her hotel on the Sunday of the third week. Not Jin. Him. She opened the door, and he was there in the hallway with his jacket on, and the controlled stillness that she had been learning to read, not as distance but as the deliberate management of a person who felt things at a depth he had spent a long time not acknowledging. And he had, she now understood, just finished not acknowledging something, and was standing in her hallway with it. She stepped back to let him in. He came in. He looked at the desk, the paper, the notes, the yellow legal pad covered in her handwriting that she used when she was working through the parts that needed to be worked through by hand. He looked at the soul mourning through the window. He looked at her. I was going to make a speech, he said. What happened to it? She said. I couldn't find the right order for it, he said. Every version I practiced put the important thing at the wrong position. What's the important thing? She said. He looked at her steadily. That in the lobby, he said, I heard your voice, and I came back, and I have been, every day since Thursday, I have been understanding something about why it was your voice, why it reached where it reached. He paused. The English is part of it. The language that was hers, I haven't used it easily since I was 11. And I used it to say wait to you before I knew anything about you. Which means some part of me knew something I hadn't been told yet. She was very still. I asked Jin to stop documenting the sleep data, he said. Not because I don't want the information. Because the information I want is different now, and it doesn't belong in a document. He paused. I slept because of you. That's not data. I don't have the precise word for it. It doesn't need to be precise, she said. It just needs to be true. He smiled. The real one. Not the anteroom, the room. And it was the specific smile of a man who has heard his own words returned to him in a context that makes them land differently. She had been waiting, without knowing she was waiting, for the smile. And it was exactly what she would have predicted, and nothing like what she had imagined, and both of those things were true at once. I want to ask you something. Ask, she said. Stay, he said. She looked at him. I said I was extending the research. Not the fellowship, he said. Stay, he held her eyes. Whatever the paper needs, whatever the fellowship allows, whatever comes after, stay. I'm not asking you to give up the work or the going home or any of the things that are yours. I'm asking you to make this city one of yours. She thought about Chicago, about the apartment and the 47 listenings, and the 2 years of carrying something that had no destination until Thursday. About Dr. Okafor and the voice is a commitment, and the specific quality of a Thursday evening in November when her body was in motion before her mind had a vote. I meant it, she said, in the lobby. When I said come back, I know, he said. That's why I came back. I mean it now, she said. He crossed the room. He stood in front of her and he lifted his hand and he held it in the space beside her face. Not touching, the patience of it, the request of it. And she understood from the patience that he was asking again, the same way he had asked in the car, and that for him asking was the thing he had decided to do differently, and he was doing it. She turned her face into his hand. His palm was warm against her cheek, and his eyes were the arriving attention at its fullest, the lens fully adjusted, landed and staying, and she thought about what she had been holding for 2 years, and what she was holding now, and they were not the same thing, and the voice that said come back and the voice that said stay were made of different materials even when they came from the same person. She was a different person than the one in the lobby. She was the one who had the choice. She called her colleague that afternoon and asked about the process for extending the fellowship research period. Her colleague, who was a practical woman and had been watching the past 3 weeks with the expression of someone assembling information she had not asked for, said the process was straightforward and the work Dominique was producing justified it, and she would make the calls. She called her therapist in Chicago. She said, in the language she had been learning to use in the 2 years since the voicemail, "I want to tell you something that happened." She told her therapist the lobby story. The voice. The man who opened his eyes for it. The Saturdays and the Wednesdays and the Tuesdays and the full night sleep data and the English in the hallway and the hand against her cheek. Her therapist was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What do you feel when you say it out loud?" She thought about the accurate answer. "Like I meant come back as much for me as for him," she said. Her therapist said, "Yes." She stayed on the line for a while after that. She looked out the window at Seoul in November, and she thought about what it meant to be a destination. To be the place a voice lands, the place a person comes back to. She had spent 8 years being that for other people, and 2 years being unable to be it for the one person she most needed to be it for, and one Thursday evening being it in a lobby in a way that had reorganized, something in her that she had thought was permanently reorganized in. A different direction she was staying. Not because she had run out of other options. Not because the flight home was too complicated to book. Because the paper was real, and the work was real, and the man in the house on the hill who said wait in his mother's language was real, and she had decided, on the floor of the lobby before she made any decision at all, that this was going to be the time she was awake. She was awake. She opened the paper draft. She wrote the last section. The part about what the voice carries when the person behind it has stopped being afraid of what they're holding. The part she had been trying to write for 2 years. The part that required sitting in the true thing long enough to find the words for it. She found the words. They were, like all the truest things, simple. Presence is not a technique. It is a choice made before you know what it will cost. The voice that reaches someone in the place between is not skilled or trained or calibrated. It is simply awake, and being awake, truly awake, to the weight of what you are holding, and the weight of what the person in front of you is holding, and the specific gravity of the space between you, is the rarest and most necessary thing one human being can offer another. It costs everything, and it costs nothing. It costs everything you have been carrying, and it costs nothing, because you were going to carry it anyway. You might as well carry it towards something. She saved the document. She put on her jacket. She went to the house on the hill, which was becoming in the specific incremental way of things that are growing into what they were always going to be, one of the places she lived. Emotional Resolution, the paper, was published 4 months later in a journal she respected, under her name and with an acknowledgement she had written 3 times before she got it right, to the city of Seoul, in November, which understood the assignment. She read it to him the night before it went live. Not the whole paper. The last section, the part about presence and cost and carrying towards something. She read it in the study with the working light and the garden outside the window and the tea that was actually warm for once, because she had gotten better at the timing of things in this house. He listened, without moving. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That's what you were holding," he said, "in the lobby." "Yes," she said. "The 2 years of it," he said. "Yes," she said. "And you carried it toward me," he said. She looked at him. At the study and the 4 months, and the fellowship that had been extended once and was being extended again, and the Saturdays and the Wednesdays and the Tuesdays and the Sunday and the hotel hallway and the English that was his mother's, and the full night's sleep data, and the smile that was. The room itself, not the anteroom. "You made it easy," she said. "You said wait." He looked at her. "You said come back." "Yes," she said. "I did." He reached across the desk. His hand came to rest beside hers on the page. Beside, the infinite patience of it, the same geometry as the hotel hallway, and the hand against her cheek. And she looked at his hand, and she looked at the last section of the paper she had finally finished, and she thought about the cost of presence, and what it meant to carry something towards something, and whether you could know, in the lobby, or in the hallway, or in the study with the working light, that the toward was worth the carrying. You couldn't know. You could only be awake and mean it, and see. She turned her hand over. He closed his around it, and the study held them. The working light, and the garden, and the sole night outside the window, and the 4 months of something growing into what it was always going to be. And his eyes were the arriving attention, fully. And she thought about Thursday in November, and a man on the floor, and her body in motion before her mind had a vote, and the voice that said come back, and how it had. How he had. How they both had. End CTA, that's where we leave them tonight. My soft-spoken storm chasers and voices in the dark. Dominique with the paper finished, and her hand turned over, and Hanyul with 16 years of alone, and one Thursday evening in a lobby, and the English that was his mother's finally finding where it belonged. If this story landed somewhere in you tonight, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe so the next chapter finds you, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see every place this voice has traveled tonight. Our family is everywhere, and I love every name, every city, every person who stayed to the end. What comes next? The situation that he said always resolves. It resolves. But what it leaves behind, and what they build in the leaving, is the story that starts where this one ends.